Hello everyone, thanks for watching my next video. This video is the sixth video in the series and it's the sixth video in the series for breaking the first fetter, realising that there is no self, realising there is no inherent self. This video is going to be directed towards people who are still struggling breaking the fetter or have reached a certain point and they can't progress any further. So, for example, they fully get the inquiry, they've seen what the inquiry is about, and yet they still haven't quite broken the fetter, or they've got a sticking point. Anyway, so because this video is addressed to those people, if you're not one of them, please watch the entire series of videos and go through the inquiry itself, because if you haven't, a lot of what I'm saying to you in this video won't make any sense. This video and what I'm about to say is specific to the people who have gone through the inquiry and who are clear on certain aspects of what they've examined. They will examine in the first part the senses and how they relate to the body. Hopefully that would have been clear. If it's not, please go back and readdress that. They will have examined mental formations. Again, if that's not clear, go back and look at that. They will have examined free will, choice, control, same thing. And perhaps they've also examined a personal sense of awareness or personal consciousness. If any of those areas aren't clear, please go back and have a look at them again, because what I'm about to say is only relevant for the people who have gone through the inquiry and who are clear that in each of those areas there is no inherent self to be found, but they're still stuck. Now, the three questions that generally come up at the end are something like this. Okay, I've gone through the inquiry, but nothing's happened. I was expecting something to happen. Nothing's happened. And what should happen, if anything? What should I be expecting to happen? To herald realising that there's no inherent self. Another potential question would be, I've gone through all the inquiry and I get it, I really do get it. It's clear to me, every time I've examined these things that you've asked me to do, I've never been able to find an inherent self. It's always just been an idea, a belief, a thought about a self that relates to a real self, but the real self can't be found. The only thing I can find, if we can say that, is a belief or an idea about one, a concept, but that isn't the real thing. That's not a real inherent self, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a real, permanent, non-changing self. Or it may be at the end of the inquiry, well, that's it, yeah, have I realised it or haven't I? How will I actually know if I've realised it or not? What's the tipping point? Good word, tipping point. What is the tipping point for me to realise it? Okay, well, it's a bit of a paradox, and I've mentioned this in one of my last videos. To when you realise it, the paradox is you realise that there is no inherent self. When you realise there is no inherent self to realise anything, which is a bit of a paradox, but that is how it works. But let me go into that, because you might grasp that mentally, but you don't quite grasp what it actually refers to or means. First of all, quickly I'll address the question, what should I expect? What will change? Will anything change? What will happen? Will I experience something happening? What will occur? And I can address that simply, nothing will change. Nothing will happen. If you're expecting something to happen or something to change, it won't. And specifically why that is because the expectation is the expectation for a real inherent self. And there isn't one. So, for example, if you're expecting experience to change somehow, that is a subtle belief that there is a personal experience right now, that this body or a self is having an experience, and this body or the self will have a new experience once it is realized, and that's not the case. And also, to expect any sort of change is a subtle belief that there is an inherent self that will change. I will experience a change. I will go from one position to another. It's still a subtle belief in a self, an inherent self that will change. Anyway, let's go into the actual meat of the inquiry. All through this inquiry, hopefully you'll have realized it's a question of examining the beliefs, ideas, thoughts that come up about a self, about I, about me, with what you can find in the immediate experience right here and right now. That's the essence of the inquiry. So, for example, if we have a belief, I am choosing, I am thinking, I am seeing, I am hearing, I am controlling, etc., 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 that is an idea, a belief coming up, then you look in the experience for that self. What is that self that is being referred to? And each time, a self, an inherent self, cannot be found. Now, it's highly likely at the end of the inquiry, what is happening is this. You'll have gone through the inquiry and each time examined the thoughts and looked for an inherent self and experience. But what you will then do is have a thought that comes up which is automatically believed in, i.e. it's believed to refer to an inherent self. You believe that thought and you're stuck on it with it. My advice to you is to keep looking. If the only reference to a self is in thought, any thought that comes up and you automatically believed in it is the illusion itself. So, for an example, you do the inquiry, you do the inquiry, you do the inquiry, you do the inquiry, and you never find an inherent self. But then a thought comes up. Have I got it, or haven't I got it? Now, if you automatically believe that thought, you are automatically believing that there is an inherent self here that will get something or will not get something. And rather than just automatically believing the thought, inquire on it. What is the I that will get or will not get something? Or you may have been doing the inquiry, yes, I've examined this, I've examined that, examined this, and at the end of the process, well, I've done all this inquiry, but I haven't got it. And that thought that comes up automatically references a real inherent self. But stop. Don't keep on inquiring. What is this I, this self, that has been doing the inquiry? What is this I that has been doing the inquiry and has not obtained something? What is that? Can that I be found? Or, just like everything else, is that another thought that comes up and is automatically believed in? Or, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, you have done the inquiry, yes, there's no self, there's no self there, there's no self there, inherent self there, no other self there. And at the end, a thought comes up, well, I've got it mentally, but I haven't realised it fully. But don't stop the inquiry. What is that? What is that referring to? The thought that comes up, I've only got this mentally, I haven't got it fully. What inherent self does that refer to? What is this I you're in the thought? Does it refer to an inherent self, one that you can find, or not? Never stop the inquiry. If a thought comes up relating to a self that could get something, that could change, that could go from one position to another, that could get something mentally, that could realise something, they're all references to an I. What is this I? What is this I? Is it an inherent self? Is it something real, something you can find? Or is it just more thoughts coming up? It's more thoughts coming up. More thoughts coming up. And even to the extent of a self that believes or doesn't believe the thought automatically. Is there a self doing that? Because although I've said just a few moments ago that you do the inquiry and at the end another thought comes out which is automatically believed in, is there even a self automatically believing in it? What is that? Is that a real inherent self, or is it yet another idea about a self, another belief? Another question which might come up is, well, it's clear that there is no inherent self, but what realizes that? What realizes there is no inherent self? But there's a problem with that question. Clearly, the question must be answered with a word, an idea, a thought, a belief. But we're not looking for that. We're not looking for another word answer or a thought or a belief or an idea. We're looking for something that is inherently real. So the question itself cannot be answered in the way you want to if you are looking for something that is not a word, a belief, an idea, a concept. Because the question can only be answered using words and concepts. If you're looking for something that is not a word, an idea, a belief, a concept, then the question won't address that. Other paths at this point may refer you to something that is not separate, like a universal consciousness or a universal awareness. And that's okay as a stopgap to try and get you to realise that what you are of your own nature is not something that's separate. Well, we don't have that in Buddhism. That's not something we latch onto. But it's kind of an acceptable stopgap. So for an answer you could say awareness realises, or consciousness realises, or if you were even of a scientific mind, energy realises. All there is energy. But notice that is yet another idea. If you're looking for something that is not an idea, then the answer cannot come in words. So just to recap once more, if you're at the end of the path and you have confusion or questions, if the confusion or the questions have an I in them that relate to a self, that relate to a person, you must also inquire on the question in exactly the same way. What is the I, the person, the thing that you are referring to in the question or the confusion? What is that? What is its nature? Is it an inherently real self, or is it just another idea about a self? Is it an idea about a person that will get something? Is it an idea about a person that will change? Is it an idea about a person that has got something in one way but not something in another way? Because the nature of the mind and the nature of this illusion is that it's a closed system. Because every time you examine I, it's automatically believed to refer to a real, inherently real self or person. And the only way you can break through it is to realize that they don't. Every single reference to a self, a person, I, me, anything at all that you consider yourself to be separate from everything else, is only a basis in thought. There is never an inherent self to be found. So, in one way, it is that simple. That's it. That's all there is. There is no inherent self. It's simply the thoughts are always believed to refer to one. And they never do. No thought ever relates to a real person. No thought ever relates to a separate self. No thought, none of them. And that includes the thought that there is something to get something, that there is a person to achieve something, that there is a person who will stop doing something, that there will be a person that will change from one thing to another. The idea that there is a person who will have a new experience. All those are just more thoughts and more thoughts and more thoughts and more thoughts, all about a self. A self that doesn't inherently exist. It's just thoughts. And yes, it is as simple as that. That's all there is. But if you're waiting for something to happen, nothing will happen. That's it. The unexamined thoughts themselves, which are automatically believed in, create the illusion that there is a real self. And there isn't. That's it. Anyway, I hope you've got something from that video. I hope you've managed to break through it. If you haven't, if you have any questions, always interested to hear what people's experiences are. I'm not perfect. Maybe I've got a different angle I could approach from, or maybe you've got some ideas yourselves or questions yourself. Put them in the comments below. Please click like, please click subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.